Welcome boys and girls, Costin here with a discussion about the Beastmen in Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires. With this video, I did really consider how I was going to cover all of the races in the game. I decided to start with the Beastmen because they're the first race you can pick, but I would like to hear your thoughts on how you feel I should do this. Should I go over these races in order, or should I go for the ones that I consider the highest priority? Now, as far as races go in Warhammer 3, the Beastmen absolutely work as a race in the game. That said, there are problems. Not necessarily the biggest problems, unlike some other races which do have issues, but there's certainly something jarring about playing a Beastmen campaign. First off, Legendary Lords don't have unique mechanics unless we're talking about Tarax, who has his whole rampage meter, momentum situation that gives him a bunch of benefits. Essentially, it means after a certain point in your campaign, it's just much better to play Tarax than everyone else. The only difference is the starting position, but outside of that, it kind of doesn't matter. You can also confederate all other Legendary Lords of the Beastmen, assuming you own the 2 DLC, so their Race Pack, and then Silence and the Fury. So that's problem number 1. Problem number 2 has more to do with one of the core issues of the game, which is the auto-resolve. So the way auto-resolve works is it's based on melee stats, armor, leadership, those kind of factors. This is an inherent issue in Warhammer 3, but it does affect the Beastmen more than others, because it does mean you will be fighting a lot more manual battles than other people, than other factions, and that just is going to add to the early game grind. But in terms of racial design, you are going to have a lot of that early game grind, because you can only work with one army at the beginning of your campaign for a decent length of time, until you get to Ruination level 2. And that severely limits your campaign potential. Back in Warhammer 2, it was fine to have a system like this because supply lines were different, but supply lines have changed, so Beastmen just feel outdated from this perspective. It is a similar issue with the Tomb Kings, though that has gotten better with their rework. However, Beastmen just have this kind of situation where they can spend a good amount of turns in the most significant portion of the campaign, the early game, with limited armies. And then, once they overcome this, they end up steamrolling. So, one of the big issues I've mentioned is that we have this inverted difficulty curve in the game. And the way Beastmen work, they're not going against that issue, they're embracing that issue. So that's really the chief problem with them. What Warhammer 3 struggles with right now is specifically that inverted difficulty curve, and Beastmen are suffering from that with army capacity. You get to a point where it doesn't matter, but early on it does matter, and it means that the most interesting, most significant portion of the game where you have the best choices to make is going to be limited for them. Speaking about limits, the fact that you don't have diplomacy with Beastmen means that you're just playing kind of a lesser game. Again, not an issue in Warhammer 2, because diplomacy in Warhammer 2 was, let's just say, questionable, but diplomacy has been much improved in Warhammer 3. So really, a lot of issues with Beastmen come down from the fact they're a Warhammer 2 race in Warhammer 3. On top of that, there's Dread. And Dread is the issue attached to pretty much everything, because Dread is used for almost everything that you do in a Beastmen campaign except items and buildings. You don't recruit units with money, you recruit them for free, but in order to recruit units you need the building, so that's for money, but really more often than not you need the unit capacity. The problem of the way unit capacity works is that you're using the same resource for unit capacity as you're using it for everything else, and in fact, increasing unit capacity is the biggest waste of Dread in a campaign. Because, for instance, you can spend 100 Dread to get an Ungor herd or get some Ungor herds, or you can go over here and get 500 for hero capacity. That hero is always going to be more useful than a lot of units. In fact, that hero is a lot more useful. That hero capacity is a lot more useful than one Minotaur capacity, for instance, because it's roughly the same price. Or you can save up more for Legendary Lord. So it creates the dynamic where the best thing you can do with the Beastmen is endure the early game, get the Confederations done, then get a lot of heroes, and then also upgrades for those heroes, because you can get Lord and Hero Recruit rank up to 15. So the fact that Dread is used for everything means that you're always kind of pushed down the same path. You can explore, but it's just making your it just means your campaign progress is slower. And more importantly, it actually kills variety, because there's a lot of units here, but there's not really that much reason to use a lot of it. Several factors now. When you add the army capacity, the number of regiments renowned, the fact that you at least do have one unit of each type, right? So limited armies with one unit of each type and good amount of regiments renown, plus the fact that you're spending a resource that is better spent elsewhere, kills your army variety and pushes down samey armies and kills a lot of campaign replayability. So what's the solution? At least one or two resources to deal with, maybe a different way of dealing with unit capacity. Quite seriously, I would take money for it. You know, maybe we can spend Dread if we want to, or maybe we can spend money. It's an idea. Or maybe some things can be researched that currently require Dread. Research tree for a Beastman is absolutely one of those things that is also feeling very lacking. Absolutely, there's useful things in here, like campaign movement range, for instance, 10%, all that kind of stuff. So there are powerful things, but it just feels limited, and in general, research trees can feel very one-dimensional for a lot of races. Core issue, not exclusive to Beastmen. It's more so Beastmen are not improving on the core issues. They're kind of embracing them, so that's why they feel so jarring. They do work. Emphasis on this. They do work, but I think they could be a lot more interesting. So things like unit capacity. And on top of that, one of the big problems with Beastmen is their AI just doesn't function in Warhammer 3. Now, that's down to the core AI issue, recruitment issue that Creative Assembly has flagged. They've been the most broken race from an AI perspective in the game for a very long time. Now, with respect to this, I would also say that one of the things about Beastmen is they can be genuinely annoying to deal with in a campaign. Because like you look at Ikeclaw, he wants to conquer Estalia, but Mogr might just burn it to the ground before you even take a province. So that can really negatively impact your campaign. Not in a challenging way, more in the I'm frustrated type thing. And Ikeclaw is a powerful legendary lord of a very good and well-designed race. So if it can affect him that negatively, it affects others more so. It's really Cetra, Ikeclaw that get affected worse. So to some extent, Karl Franz, but not really. But that's it. And yes, anyone who's dealing with the Tark situation, because when you're taking over this province, you're having to rebuild that. Maybe it would be best if you're not playing, and if anyone is not playing a Beastman campaign, that they just show up later on. You know, because we do have those events of Beastman factions spawning, even when the major ones get destroyed. So maybe that's it. Like at one point, you know, Tark spawns with a full army. He has multiple army capacities on that, and he starts becoming a problem. That could be a cool thing. Not really an endgame crisis, more like a natural foe to spawn in a campaign. That would be my perspective on really core issues. Like, in a way, the situation with Beastmen is pretty simple compared to other races, because they are a more simple race. But maybe they shouldn't just be that simple. That's all I had to say. Christine signing out. Stay tuned for more.